For my first video of 2021, I thought I'd take a look at what is probably my favorite game of 2020. I say probably because I've played this game 15 times in the past 2 weeks, more than any other game released that year, but I also say probably because I just didn't play that many new games released in 2020. You know what things were like then. Long ago, far in the past, so far back we won't even think of it anymore. But for now, while this game is at the top of my list, let's give an overview of Silencio, a 2 to 4 player cooperative card game by Cesar Gomez Bernardino and Zoc Verlag. Your goal in this game is to get rid of all the cards in your hand. That's it. You can't just throw them away though. You must follow very specific rules to play those cards, specifically playing them in ascending order on the piles in front of you. And of course, that short description might immediately bring to mind things like The Mind or The Game, two of my favorite titles released of all time, or Ohanami, which I did a video on recently, another game about playing cards in order. I've got Tranquility in the Wings. I'm just a sucker for cooperative games in which you put cards in order. So that's what this is, but it has some differences to it. So let me give you an overview of what it's like. Here are the components of Silencio set up for a 4-player game, with each player starting with a hand of 5 cards. Cards come in 4 colors, numbered 2 to 13. You additionally turn up 1 card for each player face up into an oracle pile. You put aside the treetop card unless you're using that variant. You've got the all-powerful shrine you set to the side. You also have a shrine of each color. The one of each color starts in play. Each player gets a reference sheet in English or German, and you have the starting player card. And from this point on, the entire game is played in silence. You're going to look at the cards in your hand, and if you feel you should be the starting player, you take this card. If no one takes a starting player card, you lose. So someone has to step up and do it. You then choose 1 card in your hand and you pass it to your neighbor. They add it to their hand, they choose a card, they pass it to their neighbor, and so on until you get a card back. So you get to share a little information around the table. You are then going to take turns playing cards to this central display. If you cannot legally play a card, you must pass. Otherwise, you must play something. All cards must be played in ascending order. So if you have a red 7, then you cannot play any red lower than 7. If you got a red 13, then red is probably done unless you get rid of that 13 somehow, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I'm going to begin play. I play a red 2. Maybe that's why I wanted to start. I had the lowest card possible, which is great because we all want to play our cards into this display. So you want to have as small a gap or increase as possible so that we have more room in which to play cards. However, if you play a card that is exactly 1 higher than the previous card in that color, you get the negative effect of this color. So the negative effect for red is that if the next card played would have a light effect, a positive effect, because it is not immediately 1 higher, then you ignore it. Okay. So we got good and bad effects here. However, I passed a 3 red to my neighbor because I knew that I was going to lead. And so now they can play this. And, okay, great. We get another negation of a next positive effect if the next card is played. But we keep playing. If the next card, let's say, is a red 9, well, great. Then we get the positive effect, the light effect of red 9, which means the next dark effect does not take place. So red is very straightforward. The next card played, you either ignore the positive or negative effect of it, depending on which side of the red card you played. It's good that we have this positive effect. However, now we can't play anything between 3 and 9. That's not great, but okay. So we ignore the next negative effect. Well, let's say we don't have a negative effect. Let's say the next card played is a green 3, which is not immediately 1 higher than this. So we get the positive effect here. And this effect, you get to choose a player. So I played this 3. I'm going to pick a player around the table. And that player will then choose to swap a card from their hand with their neighbor. So I give them a card and they look at it and then they give me something back. Or I swap a card in my hand with one of the Oracle cards. Ideally one I can play in the future. So the red 5's out. But if I had the red 6 in my hand, maybe I throw it away and I pick up something more useful. Or I can take the cards here, put them on the bottom of the deck, and turn over new ones, which refreshes this if none of these are playable, or it just gives us more information about cards that are not currently in play. We continue. Let's say the next person plays the green 4. And you don't have to play cards in color order, so we can skip around and play a blue and then a green, a yellow, a red, and so on. But for ease of explanation, I'm going to stick to color order here. If you play the green and get the negative effect, the dark effect of green, the next card played must be green. If the next player has no green cards in their hand they can legally play, they pass. You go on to the next player, maybe they pass. If no one can play a green card, you lose. If someone can, however, then great. You get this effect and you just continue the game. Hopefully you have not jumped up too high in green. So, other things. Yellow. The positive effect for yellow is that I get to take a card from my hand and reveal it face up in front of me. So everyone knows I have this card in my hand. I need to play it at some point. Hopefully we don't jump up past this number. Additionally, any player can play this card. So if they had something that would be terrible and this would be better, they can always just take this and play it. So players may end up with different numbers of cards in their hand, depending on how things go. If we have the negative effect of yellow, so we play the yellow 4 and we get the dark effect, the next player has to play a card from their hand at random. So they shuffle their cards, turn one over. If they can legally play it, they must. And in this case, we would almost certainly lose the game if that were the card that they actually had to play. So yellow is pretty risky sometimes. If a card is in front of you, then that does not seem to count as if it's in your hand. So you can possibly avoid getting hammered by putting something down that you don't want to have to be forced to play randomly. That'd be much better. Although then the next player would also be forced to play randomly. The blue, and why the blue is so risky and so important. Well, the negative effect of blue is that you have to take one of the Oracle cards and give it to another player. So maybe I want to give someone the blue 7, or no, I want to give them the green 10. So hopefully they can play it and we'll get some swapping ability that will be helpful in the future. So I give it to some player and then we turn up another card from the deck. So the Oracle always has the proper number of cards. Super, we continue. If you get the light effect of blue, then you get to pick up the last played red, yellow, or green card and add it to your hand. And that seems like a drawback since, of course, you're trying to get rid of all your cards to win. However, now I can pick up this 9 and hopefully make room for someone else to play. Maybe someone, oh, now I can play that 4. I don't have to swap it away or do something else I got here. Yes, we'll avoid the light effect on the next card played, but better that than not being able to play this card at all. You continue playing until either all the cards are played and you win, or everyone has to pass in turn, and then you count up the cards and you see how badly you lost. So blue lets you reset the red, yellow, or green pile somewhat, but blue cannot be altered. So once blue goes down, it stays. The shrines have each of the light color of the light effect for a color. So I could choose on my turn if I'm going to play a card. Before or after I play a card, I could use this yellow shrine, flip it over, and then put a card in front of me just to let people know what I have. Or maybe I had the red 4 myself, so I'm going to use the blue power, pick up the red 9, and then play this. And so people know what I have. I got another card out. This shrine is used up. This shrine can be any of the 4 powers that you wish. Hopefully you have enough shrines and enough ability to manipulate things that you get all the cards laid out. There's a quick overview of Silencio, which, as I mentioned, I played 15 times so far on a review copy from Zoc4Log, 4 times each with 3 and 4 players and 7 times with 2 players. Yes, we've been putting it through the paces here. Now, the short description of Silencio sounds very much like the game, or even more particularly, like The Mind. Cooperative games in which you are silently playing cards in ascending order. They sound very similar, don't they? Funny thing though, Silencio was originally released by Bernardino through his own publishing brand 2D Juegos under the name Eureka in late 2017, whereas The Mind was released by NSV in early 2018. So it's not the case where one designer was copying another, but just coincidental design where they came up with the same idea, cooperatively playing cards in silence, with cards being played in ascending order, not because there's something special about ascending order, but more it's just to facilitate the interaction between the players, because that's what both of these games are really made to do. They're not made to have you focus on the table so much as focus on the other players and have that spirit of trying to work together with them. Now, to compare them more directly, The Mind, I think, does this better. This is still one of my favorite games of all time, mostly because it is very player dependent and it creates this experience like nothing else, where you are collectively with this group trying to get in sync and just play together. You somehow have to magically make this work. And it just feels wonderful when it does. And you're all playing simultaneously, which is the big difference between The Mind and Silencio. Because here you are playing in turn. Me, you. So, based on the number of players in the game, I have 1 or 2 or 3 people who are going to play before it's my turn again. And that affects the way the game flows versus The Mind, where I'm just waiting for the right moment and then I strike. So with Silencio, it plays somewhat differently with 2 than with 3 and 4. Mainly because with 2-player game, I only have 1 player playing before I play again, and we have found it easier to play and win with 2 players, mostly because thanks to the initial pass, the starting player pass, or the green power, which lets you swap cards or change with the oracle, or the yellow power where you get to reveal cards, you often have a very good sense of what the other player has in hand or can play. And you can often just play more effectively, bouncing turns back and forth, and then you win. In our 7 games, I think we've had 2 games where we used no shrines at all, and all the other ones we used 1. We had 2 games where we never even used the oracle. It just didn't matter because everything just worked out for us. Partly I think it's a numbers game because you each have 6 cards in hand. You use the cards 2 to 8 in each color, so that's 28 cards in the deck with 12 cards in your hand that you have to play, so 12 out of 28. Whereas in the 3-player game, you have 6 cards in hand, so 18 cards, and you use numbers 2 to 10, so 36. So you have half the cards in your hand, so you've got a higher percentage to play, which, yes, seems like that would make it harder. With 4 players, you each have 5 cards in hand instead of 6, so 20 cards versus 48 in the deck. So 20 out of 48, 18 out of 36, half, and then 12 out of 28. Now, Eureka was a little bit different in that there were no shrines on the ones. The ones were just mixed in the deck. And with the 2-player game, you used only cards 1 to 6. So you would have to play 12 out of 24 cards, which is the same percentage as the 3-player game. So yes, it would be harder under the original Eureka, and we can definitely adapt that if we want and just use cards 2 to 7. Additionally, you can make the game harder for yourself by using fewer shrines. Just don't use the all-powerful shrine, which can be any special power that you want, or any of the shrines. You can adjust it as you wish to make the game more difficult. If you are having problems, on the other hand, you can make it easier by using this tree card, I forget what it's officially called, where after the 3rd dark effect on a card, you put this out, and then some player can take this card and use it to share a little bit of information following certain guidelines in the rules. So you get to talk a little bit more, and then that card goes away, and then after the next 3 dark effects, you reveal it again, and someone else gets to reveal a little bit more information. we haven't seen that as being needed in the two-player game because, again, we just bouncing turns back and forth. Sometimes the cards just work out wonderfully. Had a game earlier today because we're playing again, trying to get more experience before my video, or also just wanting to play, where I had a hand where I had the 2, 3, 4, 7 of red and 2 other things. I took the start player, and then I gave my partner the red 3. They gave me something. So I played the red 2 to start. They played the red 3 as expected. I played the red 4. By chance, they had the red 5. Okay. And we were already just rolling along. That other player also had 4 yellow cards in hand. And so they ended up dropping them all because I had no yellow. So it just flowed much easier because you have fewer people playing and trying to do things. You're not stepping on each other's toes. With 3 people, I've got 2 players before I play again. With 4 people, I have 3. So there's more things that can happen. And the hands become a little harder to manage, especially if you get a hand that is mostly high numbers or mostly low numbers. You want to range, but of course, you have limited opportunities to swap. You've got the beginning where I can give 1 card away after I get a card. Okay. But I can't indicate to someone that I need a green power if they can let me do that. Unless I can do a yellow and then somehow I drop something and they can read that and be like, oh man, Eric's really in trouble. He needs some help there. Which can happen. So sometimes you just don't have things work out as well because there's more people, there's more things going on, but the game feels better with more players because collectively you've got more people sort of focused on the same thing, and you get this feeling whenever something bad happens. Someone puts down the yellow card where you got to do negative, someone's got to play randomly, and you're all just like, what's going to come out? Should he really have done that? And then maybe it works out. Maybe it just sets you up and you have to then dig out of that hole by using a shrine power or hopefully playing out of it. You take gambles on playing a sort of mid-range green and just hope that someone else has green. Or you try to wait until maybe someone picks it up from the Oracle and you know that, oh, I've got the 7, but they just picked up the 10. And so that way, great, they can play, but they won't be forced to, again, be forced to have someone to play green. Oh, there's all these little details that come out as you start playing because initially it seems very confusing and you have no idea what's going on. And you might just want to play your first game talking completely to make sense of it. And then you go into silent mode after that and just try to read what the other people are doing. And initially it seems like you're somewhat limited in what's possible, but the more you play with the same people especially, the more you get a sense of what they are trying to communicate to you through certain plays, with the understanding, of course, that sometimes you just have to play what you can and leave it at that. Sometimes you got a hand of high cards and you're just going to play a high card and hopefully other people can help you get out of that situation. Yeah. There's lots of stuff going on in this incredibly simple design that you're going to play 15 or 20 minutes and then probably shuffle up and play again. By chance, we won our first 3-player game. First time we played, we're like, great. This is super easy. Were you sure we played this right? And then we played again and had a much harder time. 4-player, same thing. Won the first one and then much harder after that. It's all just the randomness of the cards, how things come out, just the flow of everything. There's all these different factors that are hard to account for, but then sometimes you just stitch things together well and you see people, taking actions. Oh, they just picked up that card with the blue power. Okay, I gotta remember, they got that, and I passed them this before, and they got this. Okay. And you're sort of like piecing together what could happen. And then sometimes the plan comes together and it all works perfectly, even though, of course, you didn't talk about it at all. It's just sometimes leading through the card play and hoping that the train goes the way that you wanted it to go. And sometimes you just completely forget that someone picked up a card or you play the wrong thing, which again, similar to the mine. It's not like you made the mistake necessarily. Did you play too quickly? Did the other player play too slowly? The error is kind of between you. It's shared by the group. And this feels that way as well, because sometimes you're just forced to go down a certain path. And hopefully it's not too bad and you can come back from it. And sometimes you can, and it feels awesome. There you go. Silencio.